Hello and welcome back to the Cricket Draft Show, where it's your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about fantasy cricket for the County Championship in 2025. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel, drop us a like on the video if you're enjoying the series. My name is Dan Jadzevics. I'm joined by Dan Weston, and we will have a special guest later in the episode, and that is the co-host of the County Cricket Podcast, Joe Nuttall. But before we get to that, we've got Game Week 6 to review. We've got things you might have missed ahead of Game Week 7. We've got dream teams. We've got exciting most players in, most players out. Loads of stuff that you can come to expect on this channel ahead of each game week. But Dan, how are you? How was your Game Week 6?
Mate, I am well, although I'm falling further behind you in our little mini league. You're about 600 or so points ahead of me now. So yeah, a lot of ifs, buts and maybes and a mixed bag over the last week or so. I scored just over the average for the game week, which I kind of feel like, given that I had minus 225 points, 10 men only after Michael Booth didn't get picked, and then 8 points between Jordan Clark and Kai Smith, I suppose that wasn't a disaster. I was basically playing with 8 men, and I had 2 in the dream team, George Hill and Ed Barnard.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was a really interesting week. Fascinating, really, because I mean, I had what I thought was a really good week. I picked up 1,600 points. 600 of them came from Ed Barnard, gave him the captain's armband in the absence of Ryan Higgins this week, and with that 170 not out he got against Surrey was quite impressive. But I was outside the top 1,000 players with 1,600 points. I also dropped about 15 places in the overall game. I dropped from 168th to 186th. But as you say, I've gained on you by about 700 points. I was stung by Kai Smith. That didn't exactly go to plan, but it was perplexing. I mean, 616 points for Ed Barnard. And then the nearest one to that is Ben Sanderson on 208, which mostly came with bat in hand, which was a little, well, it was quite exciting at the time, to be completely honest with you. But yeah, it was an interesting week. Why do you think that was? Why do you think? I mean, there was a lot of teams weren't playing. Were people pigeonholed down the same kind of route? So actually, the teams were quite similar.
I think that's probably likely in these weeks where there's only sort of, I think 12 teams were playing. I think, it was 12 teams, wasn't it? 4 in Div 4 matches in Div 1, 2 matches in Div 2, I think it's obvious kind of which players are pretty attractive in terms of value propositions, and I much prefer the full game weeks, which we've got Game Week 7 coming up.
Yeah, back to normality for next week, which we will get to. But this is the dream team from Game Week 6. Let us know if you had any of these players. I think I had 1. You've mentioned that you've had 2. But Adam Lyth and Jake Libby went to the top of the order. Tom Latham made his Warwickshire debut and scored a massive 100. Another one of those overseas cricketers just making the county championship look pretty easy. Ben Kellaway, for his second week in the row, makes the dream team for Glamorgan. George Hill, Ed Barnard, Liam Patterson-White. They are your 3 of your all-rounders that make up that team. Ben Folkes might be a slightly trickier pick with being one of several wicket-keeping options at Surrey. Kyle Abbott had a fantastic game for Hampshire, despite the fact that they came out on the wrong side of it. Tom Taylor, the second Worcestershire player in defeat to Sussex, makes the Dream 11, the Dream Team. And then finally, Ollie Robinson there as well. Who was your player pick, good or bad, from Game Week 6? Maybe exclusively to Game Week 6, maybe with an eye to look forward.
Okay, so my player pick for the week was Liam Dawson. And the reason why was because I splashed 9 million on him because I had the money to spare because I transferred out Joe Root. So that was just a splurge basically on my part. But I think the reason why I'm highlighting Liam Dawson is that he got 76 points, which was double to 152 as captain. But I also had Ed Barnard and George Hill, as I mentioned, in my team, and both of them scored just over 300 points. And if I'd have made them captain, I would have picked up another 230 points or so. So it really shows the value of a high-scoring captain for your teams, and potentially in certain weeks, if you've got that double captain googly as well, it's worth a real opportunity to catch up on some people if you play it right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It definitely is, and it's someone that you would kind of expect Liam Dawson to at least bank yourself some good points. But maybe you got stung there. Maybe the 9 million is too much for Liam Dawson. You can only make a certain amount of substitutions, and at the end of the day, if that was where your budget was, that's where you went. But maybe it's a lot of money, isn't it? I was looking at Kai Smith. Now, he's been quite a fascinating kind of prospect over the course of the year so far. We spoke about him at the very, very beginning about the fact that, yes, we think he's going to take the gloves for Warwickshire and we think he's going to bat because Al Davies didn't particularly want to keep. I know he had a finger injury at the end of last year. And he'd done really well. He was so cheap, was Kai Smith. He was coming in at 4.3 million on the cricket draft game. He's owned by just under 15% of people and he's made 500 points, so about 100 points per game. A bargain, which I think enabled so many people to then go and spend more money on the likes of Liam Dawson and Higgins, etc. But this week just gone against Surrey, he's returned absolutely nothing. Now, he didn't keep. Al Davies took the gloves and he batted 8 as well for Warwickshire. Now, if he isn't going to keep and he bats 8, and I know they've got a lot of all-rounders in this Warwickshire lineup, which gives them a bit more flexibility, but I'm not convinced there's a lot of value left there down at 4.3 million if he's going to bat 8 and not keep.
Yeah, bit of a strange one because you're wondering what the decision was to go with that structure from their think tank, because obviously Kai Smith's kept all season so far and then didn't this game, and then batted, well, basically got thanks for coming because he didn't even bat. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange one having a non-bowling, non-batting number 8, and yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they adapt both in terms of their usage of Kai Smith, but also their selection decisions as well, because it kind of doesn't really work out, doesn't really fit, does it? Having that sort of spare batter at number 8.
No, it might work for Warwickshire, but I don't think it's going to work for the cricket draft. So, who are the players that people are signing this week if you are looking to replace someone like Kai Smith? But you got players coming in this week. You got Ben Kellaway, who's just made his second dream team. Marcus Harris is the leading run scorer in the country. Kyle Abbott, Ian Holland as Leicestershire make their return from their week off, and then the overseas Tom Latham up at Warwickshire. Going out, and these are kind of interesting, but the first one to go out is Fergus O'Neill. Now, he's not been around for Nottinghamshire for the last couple of weeks, so a few people maybe just catching up here on the cricket draft. James Rue and Sam Cook, they're obviously got England duty coming up, so they're unlikely to be involved. Jordan Cox obviously picked up the injury, which is why James Rue is now playing for England or in that squad. And then the other one, which is interesting, is Saif Zabe is going out of the team. Any of those players, Dan, that are kind of in or out that have surprised you, or any of them that kind of take your interest at all?
Yeah, I've made notes on quite a few actually, Dan. First of all, I mean, Ben Kellaway at 4.8 million, he's still only owned by about just over 10% of players in this, and he's got 186 points per game almost over the season so far. I don't think many people saw that coming. I'm sure that 10.6% of ownership has come pretty recently, especially probably after that first Team of the Week performance. Would worry a little bit about recency bias. We saw that in play earlier in the season with Tom Banton getting that 300 odd, and then everyone piled into him, and it didn't really work out. So yeah, that'd be something to consider. Marcus Harris, must have in my team, one of the most transferred in players. I've had him in recently. He scored around a third of Lancs's runs this season, and his incredible county cricket track record over the long term for various teams. I mean, I was part of the group that brought him in at Leicester back in the day for his first county stint. Absolutely fantastic, and yeah, likely to score big points whenever he's in the Lancashire team. Ian Holland, no surprise that he's brought back in after that blank game week for Leicestershire. Everyone's going to be wanting to have a guy who opens the bowling a lot of the time and bats in the top 3. Huge match involvement. And then looking at the outs, Fergus O'Neill was an interesting one. What I wonder is, because he was quite cheap, maybe people have used him as a bench. They've switched him to bench for game week 5 or 6, and now they had the additional transfers have switched him out a little bit more. James Rue and Sam Cook, England duty, so they're going to be pretty sparingly available. And obviously Jordan Cox is injured and missed out on that test call-up as well. So I think it's kind of mostly logical, bit of recency bias, but some interesting observations nonetheless.
Absolutely, absolutely, and well researched, Dan. I think you've done well there. Look, if you are enjoying this, please drop us a subscribe on the channel, drop us a like on the video. Make sure you are following the Cricket Draft across all of the socials, where you can keep up to date with injury news, availability, new signings. There'll be predicted 11s, general cricket news, and of course, not just too far around the corner, but the T20 Blast will be starting soon. So you need to make sure you're staying tuned with the Cricket Draft across socials to make sure that you don't miss anything. Things you might have missed, though, across the course of Game Week 6 is, and I'll read them out as follows, but Simon Harmer only took 1 wicket for Essex in that game, but still scored 149 points. Ollie Price is the 7th highest scoring player in the game, but is only owned by 4.7% of people. Jake Libby has scored over 50% of Worcester's runs against Sussex in the second innings of 167 out of a total of 313. The next highest score was 34. Bo Webster, we spoke about him last week, but he did actually bowl some off spin in the game against Surrey, so potentially could that mean that he actually has a bit more match involvement than what we thought. Rob Yates, a Cricket Draft favourite, a batter, but bowled 47 overs at the weekend. Carl Verena, Lyndon James and Liam Patterson-White all scored 33 runs for Nottinghamshire in a total of 333. So just a bit quirky for you. Dan Mousley, he's about the only regular county championship starter that's been picked in this select 11 that's going off to play Zimbabwe. And some overseas news for you as well. They're coming soon. Matt Henry, he's been injured at the start of the year, but he's on his way over for Somerset. And the, fans' favourite Marnus Labuschagne, who will be preparing for the World Test Championship, is making his way over to play a couple of games for Glamorgan ahead of that. Matt Henry, Marnus Labuschagne, Dan, spending your money on some of those. You've only got a couple of free transfers this week. You've only got 2. I know we spoke about penalties and you went big on them last week, but you bringing in Matt Henry or Marnus?
Might look at Matt Henry. He's literally decimated county cricket whenever he's been available for teams. Thinking of Kent for first stint in county cricket a few years back, Somerset more recently. Been absolutely fantastic, and if he's fully fit and firing, I think he's going to be a points machine. Labuschagne is an interesting one because he's had a bit of a mixed bag recently in terms of his test output for Australia. Probably a little bit more cautious on him than I will be on Matt Henry, but I think I could end up regretting that as well. Probably but because I don't have a batter that I'm probably going to get rid of in this coming game week, I think that makes it a bit more likely that I'll go with Henry rather than Labuschagne.
It limits your options, doesn't it? Right, There's all the things you've missed. There is the look ahead to Game Week 7, look back at Game Week 6. Let's bring in our guest, Joe Nuttall. As I said at the start of the episode, we do have a guest this week. We've got the co-host of the County Cricket Podcast. We've got Joe Nuttall with just around 46,000 career points on the Cricket Draft and just inside the top 1,000 for the County Championship in 2025. Big Josh Bohannon fan. Joe, welcome to the show. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. It's good to be here talking county cricket, the Cricket Draft. It'll be exciting to kind of have this chat. I'm looking forward to it.
It's a great game. It's a great way to stay engaged with the format. But how's your team gone so far? How is your year looking?
Well, kind of up and down. I've had peaks and troughs. The first week I had a pretty good week, 1,700 points. I had Tom Banton in my team, so obviously that kind of carried a lot of weight, and then kind of struggled a little bit. Game week 5 was a real struggle for me, only 915 points. But I took a big penalty hit to essentially fit Root and Brook into my side, which didn't really pay off. And then game week 6 was my best week, actually, 1,789 points. So kind of peaked and trough, like I said, but it's been good. Some definite positives in there, but also, a couple of...
Let's talk about one of those positives then. Which one of those players, which one has been your standout selection? What's the one you've been most proud of?
I'll probably say Fergus O'Neill. He's actually not obviously playing in the county championship anymore, but he's a player I've been a fan of for years, going back, watching the Sheffield Shield. I had him all 4 game weeks. I think I captained him in the final one as well. He got 1,040 points for me in the time he was at Notts, so that was pretty good. And also Dan Lawrence has been a pretty consistent scorer. Obviously, kind of helps that he bowls as well. Bowled obviously a hefty spell against Warwickshire, 681 points, so he's been a consistent player as well for me. So yeah, I'd say probably those two. O'Neill is someone who, like I say, I kind of backed all the way, and I'm glad it kind of paid off.
Dan, did you have Fergus O'Neill at any point through the season, or are you like me and you've got a bit of FOMO on this? Because I've missed out on Fergus O'Neill this summer.
Well, I did have him, but I've also got a bit of FOMO because I missed out on him for the first couple of weeks and then brought him in for the last part of his stint. And again, like Joe, I'm a big fan of Fergus O'Neill. I've watched a fair bit of his progress, kept a close eye on him in the Chevron Shield, and also watching him a lot in the Big Bash as well. And I think, well, I knew already because the underlying data that you had from the Sheffield Shield just translated so well to the county championship in terms of the metronomic accuracy and the skill set that he has that was almost certainly going to thrive in the county championship in English conditions, and so it proved. Just a real shame that he was only available for that 4-game stint.
Maybe it will improve. You never know. You might get those international call up for Australia.
Well, he just needs to play a few more Big Bash games. That's it. 20 Big Bash games, and he's in.
That'll happen over the winter. So watch out, Notts fans. He could be back. You mentioned the troughs. What's been what have you found to be your biggest issue this summer?
I think probably like kind of not sticking with players. I'm kind of one to kind of jump on hype. Particularly Root and Brook coming back was one example. I think I was probably one of the only people who kind of banked on them and went for both Root and Brook. As I said, took a big penalty hit. I actually used my double captain as well that week on both of them. So I really gambled on it to try and make up my points, and it did not pay off. So I think probably that has been my biggest downfall. Is I'm very much like I like to kind of stick with the hype, stick with the trends. And yeah, if someone gets runs one week, then the next week I'll probably try and put them into my team. Clearly that can be a bit of a downfall.
Hey, I admire the cavalier attitude towards Joe Root and Harry Brook, though. That is a complete all-in move at the poker table, isn't it? And I absolutely love it. How about managing blank weeks? So we haven't got them now, which has been fantastic, but game week 4, 5 and 6 have been pretty tough for players. Had you managed to get 11 players out throughout the course of that? You mentioned about penalty transfers and you're quite happy to use them. Or were you? Did you have a hand tied behind your back in any of those game weeks?
Well, actually, last week was the only week that I actually had blanks in my team, and that happened to be my best week, which is quite ironic a little bit. So, yeah, I kind of took the hit on penalties. I didn't really manage it. I more kind of was present in the moment rather than thinking ahead to the future, which probably, again, was a bit of my downfall. But, yeah, sometimes, like I said, I can just kind of jump onto the trends a little bit and kind of go for the big names or those who are scoring runs, taking wickets. And to be honest, didn't manage it so well.
Well, maybe the next question might not be quite right. It sounds like, as you say, you're living in the moment rather than a bit of a tactician when it comes to the cricket draft. But have you got a go-to tactic that helps build your team? Is there anything like that goes into it, or are you very much kind of who's in form and I'll stick them in and see what happens?
Well, I do look at kind of form, of course, but also opponents and venues. I think that's so important. So, for example, this week I put Mohammed Abbas in. Obviously, that's against Durham, Nottinghamshire. And, there's that. I feel like that's going to be quite a bowler-friendly game. So I've kind of banked on him this week. That's kind of what I tend to look at, and also, particularly this for overseas, is history of playing in England. If they have, of course, already. Dan obviously mentioned earlier about Matt Henry. How he has had previous success in the county championship, and that's the kind of thing that I look at as well to try and bank on that. And like I say, sometimes overseas stars are too good to turn down for me. I can't resist, but also I will put like a little bit of thought into it as well, and factor those things in.
Dan, is there any? I think we've spoken about matchups, and we've started to look at kind of form now, and we're going into 7 weeks. Is it the right time to start looking at who's playing who or who's playing at what particular venue? I think if Notts were playing at home, I think you'd be looking at a couple of seamers at Trent Bridge this year.
Yeah. Well, one angle I've made a note on ahead of this game week 7 is a temptation to load up on Essex players against Worcester, who have struggled so far in Division 1. Look, I already have Jamie Porter. We're very unlikely to see Sam Cook play this week, so a second Essex seamer could be a worthwhile addition. Maybe Kasim Rajita or even someone like a Shane Snater instead. So there's definitely some scope there. Do I look at even an Essex batter as well to go along with that? Although obviously Jordan Cox is injured and he probably would have been my primary target in that slot. So yeah, there's definitely scope to look at that kind of stuff. As Joe rightly says, looking at the venue data as well and understanding which venues look like they're going to be more batter or bowler friendly is definitely worthwhile. If you've got the ability to make changes, you should definitely factor those in if you're going to take this game seriously. The problem is we're back to 2 free transfers this week, so maybe that's a bit of a luxury that some people can't afford.
You still got 3 penalties though, Dan. If you want to use them, you can chip a few more points off your tally if you like.
I'm done with my TT5 after last week.
No, okay, fair enough. You've been burned. Joe, the Blast is starting very, very soon. The cricket draft will obviously have a game for the T20 Blast this summer. Who would be the first player that you're putting on your team sheet? Dan, I'll ask you the same as well.
It's tough to kind of know. There's so many different options. In terms of someone who I think is a pretty surefire banker, I go with Sam Billings, obviously. Likely to play the whole competition. I don't think he has any other kind of commitments elsewhere. Most runs for Kent last year, 411. He's obviously a really good option. Overseas wise, I think Kane Williamson could be a bit of an underrated shout. I think he will open the batting for Middlesex potentially. I feel like at Lords he'll do quite well. Obviously he's played there a lot. So he's a really good option. And also Ben Kellaway is someone for me who I think most people should be picking, purely because he's such a unique profile of player. Can bowl left arm off spin, right arm off spin. He's a really good player of spin. He's not played too much T20 cricket at all, to be honest, but I think he'll break into the Glamorgan side this year. And like I say, his profile is so unique. You're essentially getting 2 bowlers in one in many ways with him. So I think he's a really good option.
How about you, Dan? Put you on the spot. Not something you prep for this week, but
No.
give us a player that's going to be the first player on your Blast team sheet.
Well, I've got to look at the prices, obviously, but it would be wrong if I didn't pick a couple of my Birmingham Phoenix favourites as potential options for the Blast. I'm looking at high match involvement as always, so ideally guys who bat in the top 6 or 7 and get regular quotas of overs in, at least like maybe 15, 18 balls a game on average kind of thing in terms of the ball. So a couple of guys who stand out to me initially would be Dan Mousley. Looks like he's gonna be a real option with the ball for Birmingham Bears and likely to bat in the top order as well. And then also the probably an old favourite of the cricket draft, probably even Benny Howell as well, who's a player I know really well. Will bat in the top 6 or 7 for Hampshire and just does what he does with the ball. Very, very effective, very, very good at preventing boundaries and that low economy rate, and a great fielder as well. So is Dan Mousley too. So actually you've got some real match involvement there for a couple of guys who might not quite be at the top end of premium pricing.
Yeah, well, another one there that I'll kind of stay local to home and I'll take a look at the Steelbacks. We've spoken about him already, of people ditching him from the county championship side, but Saif Zabe, left arm finger spinner, one of the highest strike rates at the end of the order and an absolute gun fielder as well. I think would be a really good pick to have in your Blast team when you come around to building it. But Joe, final question for you on this particular part. We'll talk about Gameweek 7 and changes that you're going to make. But what is it you actually enjoy? What's the most favourite thing you like about the cricket draft game?
Well, I love county cricket, and I love kind of staying. I love to stay involved in county cricket. I'm a Lancashire fan, but all counties. I kind of follow all counties in that sense. And it's just so good to kind of have that competitive nature to kind of viewing and watching county cricket, I suppose. The kind of being able to, or having a reason to keep up with how every county's doing, or how, for example, Tom Banton was doing in Gameweek 1 with that incredible knock, and there was kind of an extra layer to kind of following that, I suppose. And yeah, like I said, I love county cricket, and the cricket draft adds that competitive element, as I say, that extra layer really to my personal viewing experience of county cricket.
Fantastic. Well, Joe, thanks for joining us. Final question for the three of us, though, before we wrap up this week's episode, is what changes you're going to be making for Game Week 7. Now, there's none of this sitting on the fence here on the Cricket Draft Show. We need names and we need reasons why. So, Dan, you've got 2 freebies, you've got 3 penalties. Who are the players that are getting the chop this week, and who are you bringing in?
Well, just as well I'm transparent, Dan, because I'm fed up with giving you an advantage with all my picks in advance. So I'm looking at no penalty transfers, just the 2 free transfers. Obviously, with every team playing, changes can be be made on more merits rather than fixtures. And actually, I was really prepared this week, and I thought, right, I want to build a spreadsheet with these future game weeks in mind and stuff. And then I realised that actually game week 7, 8, 9, and 10 have all got every team playing. So actually, I didn't need to. So it saved me a job. Yeah, so actually, as I say, everything can be made on their merits. The weather forecast is definitely set fair, plenty of sun, no rain on the forecast, about 18 to 20 degrees, very, very nice weather for May. So we should get 4 days of cricket in pretty much every venue. Will that boost the spinners? Well, I am not too sure. I'm definitely losing James Rue because of the availability issue and probably, as we mentioned earlier, lack of faith in Kai Smith's match involvement. So Smith might drop to the bench and Rue will free up 7 million for me to bring in somebody else as a keeper. And then I might get rid of Liam Dawson and bring in a high budget option, or I might get rid of Jordan Clark, or I might get rid of Tom Laws, depending on the Surrey lineup. That'll be a late change for me. So let's see who they pick at 10:45 on Friday morning. As I said, probably tempted to load up on a few Essex players if the opportunity arises as well. So maybe even Harmer for Dawson could be quite fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fingers crossed. We get 15 green dots at 10:45 in the morning. It's always a bit of a stressful period, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm going to drop out Harry Conway from Northamptonshire. They're going down to Glamorgan. I think it's a pretty tough place to go and bowl seam generally. So I think he's probably gone. I think Will Williams from Lancashire, he'll be my other player that's going to leave. I was pretty unimpressed with him during the week. You mentioned him already, Dan. Kasun Rajitha for Essex going up to Worcestershire. I've kind of picked him over Jamie Porter. I could afford both, but I think it's a little bit of a risk in a way that he's 0.7% owned. He's a bit of a difference maker. Yes, I've got a good lead over you, but I've got some catching up to do on the game overall. So looking there, and then I'm looking. I don't know where I'm looking, Dan, for my other bowler to replace Will Williams. This is where I'm stuck right now, but I do have I've got a bunch of players that I can interchange. I mean, I've got Tom Banton, Ben Geddes, Tom Prest could all bat up there with Dan Lawrence, and I don't know which way round I want to go for those yet. Safe Sabe I'm going to stick with. I know a lot of people have ditched him, but he batted well in the second innings, plus he's going to Glamorgan. I think he'll probably bowl a bit as well down there. Ed Barnard with the captain's armbands. Do I stick with it? Do I look elsewhere? Do I chuck it to Ian Hollands? I think I might, as he goes to where they're at Middlesex, aren't they? They are, and I think that probably nip around a bit for Ian Holland with the new ball. So, Joe, how about yourself? What have you got lined up?
Well, I had to get rid of Root and Brook finally because I just had them on my bench last week. So I've freed up about 20 million. So I brought Marcus Harrison because, I mean, back at Old Trafford this week, he's been in insane form this season, but particularly Old Trafford is like a batting paradise right now. I also brought John Simpson in as well because I just kind of essentially wanted to change my wicketkeeper around. I had Johnny Bairstow last week, just thought I'd switch it up, no particular reason. And then dipped into my penalty transfers, brought in Mohamed Abbas. Taking a little risk keeping Jaden Seals in the side. I'm not sure if he's going to be fit or not. I know he was obviously injured last week, so I'm taking a little bit of a risk there. That might change depending on squad news. But for now, I'm keeping him in. But I still got a little bit of money to play with as well, but might have to use another penalty transfer.
Use them. They're not that painful. That's what we've spoken about on this so far across the course of the season. They're not as bad as what you might think. But Joe, thank you for joining us. Dan, thank you as per usual. Folks, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed it, please drop us a like on the video. Subscribe for more. We've got more Championship. We've got Blast stuff coming up. And good luck for Game Week 7. And we'll see you in about a week's time.